just shown to my technical phone, and I do apologise for the short wait there. Please can I ask if the call raised the technical ethics anti-money laundering or fraud today?
This is a call reference 1809.
One moment. 1809.
253.
Yeah?
2347. It is dated Thursday, the 18th of November, 2021.
Oh, yes, I spoke to you yesterday. Right.
Yes.
Rachel has come back to me. She has confirmed that the department will no longer, the professional standards won't be able to speak to you. However, the issues you are raising, she goes, they should be probably reported to the law enforcement or professional conduct. So now I need to give you an email address.
Okay, can I stop you there? You don't know what the issues are which I'm reporting, and it is not professional conduct. It has nothing to do with that.
I'm just restating what Rachel has explained to me.
Okay, can you stop? Can you stop? There was nothing that Rachel was explaining or reporting. I have already dealt with her on this subject before, and it relates to something which she knows about, but which cannot go on a recorded call, to do with insurance. And what she doesn't know, and she should not be giving other people messages, because these are recorded calls. It is governed by the Official Secrets Act. There is nothing to say to professional standards, because professional standards have not been involved. These are insurance claims which have been admitted, and she is holding the evidence of the criminals, and she needs to make a report to the insurance company, which she has omitted to do because she got the notification that the insurance product was purchased and did nothing about it. As a result, she is holding the documents. She is holding them. There's nobody else in the organisation who's holding the documents. And anybody who interferes in my communication with her, because these are recorded matters, and I have not identified who I am. I have simply told you that this communication is governed by the Official Secrets Act. So there has been no identity verification of me. That is crucially important. Therefore, it is incorrect of Rachel to say that she knows what this relates to. She does not. And she does not know about City of London Police suicide rating as a result of people obstructing my access to her. And she does not know about incarceration in a high secure prison locked up 23 by 24 as a result of obstruction of access to Rachel Howell. And she is carrying the insurance documentation. And the original documentation, which she has already exposed, relating to 2013, has already been heard in a public court, including the fact that it has been signed off and agreed by Neville Khan himself. And the fact that she has not notified the insurance companies, notwithstanding the fact that Neville Khan has agreed it, has already been exposed in a public court. It is an offence called interception and perverting the course of justice to block access to Rachel Howell. The insurance companies involved and the brokers involved will not thank her. We have also been heard on a 100 million claim for each year for 25 years. That's 2.5 billion pounds. That has already been heard in court. She has got notice of further insurance instruments attempting to block that payment going through. She remains uninformed. And I have already got the benefit of the right to silence by the police. There is no mechanism for anybody else doing any more identity verification. It is over. These transactions are over. So would you kindly please stop this interception? I was good enough to say that notwithstanding that these issues were reported to you yesterday, I would be prepared to wait until today at the convenience of Mrs. Howell, and I would be prepared to wait until 11 o'clock so that she could organise her diary for the day.
Okay, can I share?
You can share this. You can share all of this with her, and I suggest you allow her to listen to this recorded call, because there is no human being on earth who can block this insurance communication. It is too late. It is over. My mother is. There's nothing to talk to me about telling me what I need to understand.
No, so I understand, sorry, ma'am. It's like, so from what I'm understanding, you're saying that Rachel is holding evidence, and that you need this evidence.
That she is under an obligation in law to provide, and she hasn't done it. But the previous evidence that she'd given me relating to 2013 has been heard. So the public courts and the crime teams know that it's there and know that she hasn't physically handed it over. And now there are additional instruments out which she must reveal, because on the back of the ones that she was hiding, there was now a further attempt to block the 2.5 billion insurance claim from going through by buying some more instruments. And she needs to now reveal them and report them to the broker and the insurance company, because they're going to be clobbered for the extra 2.5 billion, and she hasn't told them, nor told me who they are. And I've been stuck for a high secure prison in order to block the communication between her and me. This is a very serious issue, and I'm a suicide risk as a result of being jerked around for all these years. My mother died. My mother died from trauma as a result of these events. Chantal, we haven't. Yes, you should be. Because my mother never volunteered her life in order to cover up on instruments of crime. She was targeted by the Royal Bank of Canada, and her identity was stolen, as was my aunt, Siham Sami Raouf, Order of the Republic, Director General Passenger Services, Egypt Air, dead 4th of December 2009. You can go and thank Mike Lloyd, Auditor of the Royal Bank of Canada, You can go and thank Jeremy Black, auditor of Bluedale Hatfield. You've got 6 instruments of crime that she has revealed. Nick Edwards, Claire Boardman, Matt Smith, RSM Tenon, Premier Strategies, 6 bonds, RSA Willis. The court has been told that there are 5 million each, which is the amount that AXA uses for KPMG, because Rachel Howell did not hand over the documents themselves. There are also 2 more instruments, well 3, another 5k, RSA Willis, 31 December 2013. Another one, 1st of April 2013, 2 million, RSA Willis. And another one, 2 million, September 2014, Aviva. Those were... So these are the issues that have been heard and been covered up. There are now other insurance companies involved and more deaths.
I understand.
No, I don't think you do. So the point is, would you kindly let her listen to this recording? Because she has got an obligation to me and to the insurance companies, to the court and to the criminal justice system to reveal these additional bonds that were bought in 2020, and she has omitted to do it, even though she has been in court throughout 2020 on this subject, and I have ended up with a 10-month sentence in a high secure prison as a result of the fact that she didn't turn up and didn't produce them. And with a suicide risk, and with my front door bashed by the police, trying to find where I was, and the side door smashed open, and with all the storage units in the whole of the City of London broken into and Branham locks broken. And that is public, and it's on a website.
Yeah.
And at this very late date, you're telling me that she's sitting in an office giving me instructions about what I can and what I can't do. This is why City of London Police gave a suicide rating, because no human being can tolerate this obstruction. It is a recorded fact that on the 7th of January 2005, it is public, it was heard in the court in November 2012, that the Baker Tilly partners were sanctioned by exclusion from the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. 7th of January 2005. That is a public fact. It has been heard. It is a public fact that they were joint auditors of G4S with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and PricewaterhouseCoopers resigned, leaving nobody as auditor. It is a public fact that KPMG signed an auditor's report for 31 December 2006, and Nigel Tristram, head of assurance in Baker Tilly, went into the court and gave evidence in 2009 that he was the auditor who signed the 31 December 2006 auditor's report on G4S when he wasn't. That's perjury. That has all been heard. This is all over. This is simply sorting out insurance. And I am not going to kill myself Rachel Howell is going to take my call and she's going to deal with it in accordance with insurance laws, because she is the bookkeeper who is holding the bonds and the instruments. And for your information, before you start telling me regulatory and professional, Vernon Saw, who was head of regulation of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, has testified that he did not know about these bonds. And Andrew Ratcliffe, who was the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants sometime later, has given evidence to alumni of Coopers and Lybrand that when my late mother wrote to him asking him to take her call, and a phone call was arranged through the Coopers and Lybrand alumni partners, through the Alumni Association, and he took my mother's call and my call. He told us to go to hell, and he wasn't going to take our call. He'd retired, and after she was dead, and I told Vernon, Vernon leaked it to him. And when the alumni partners of Coopers and Lybrand contacted him, he told them, yes, he knew about these bonds, and he deliberately not told Mummy. That is Andrew Ratcliffe, Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants and President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, deliberately and knowingly withholding this information from my late mother so that she would die. And using Vernon Saw to go into Parliament, as he did in 2012, as the head of regulation of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, to pretend that he knows about this when he didn't, as he told me. And then I get David Carr, the CEO of the IPA and alumni of Colchester Royal Grammar School, where my brother was, and Richard Sexton, the assurance partner on these things in PricewaterhouseCoopers, and a number of other people. And what do I find? David Carr tells me, if the crime teams of the Department of Business have had crime numbers open from 2005 and in association with the Fraud Office and City of London Police from 2011, all with crime numbers, why didn't the government tell him? And why did the Institute of Chartered Accountants not tell him? And why was he left to register bonds in the name of the cousin of Jeremy French, FCA?
Okay, ma'am, I'm going to have to cut you off there. If you have any further evidence, A, you need to obviously let the legal authorities know, and B...
The legal authorities already know, and the legal authorities are the prison service and the courts, and they already know it. It has already been heard, and I don't take my orders from the switchboard of the Institute. You are not advising me as to what I am to do. I will finish. Rachel Howell has got to deal with the fact that Jeremy French, FCA, and the birth certificate is up in the public domain. You will find it on the website www.inthepublicdomain.net, as you recorded yesterday. His cousin is Dorothy French, and the son is a man called Paul Atkinson, who's IPA, and that Jeremy French was buying bonds, and instead of logging them with the Institute of Chartered Accountants, he was logging them with the IPA in a surrogate name. And that was what made David Carr absolutely blazing furious. That a bond that was bought for 31 December 2013 for 5k using the cousin of Jeremy French so that it would go into the IPA and be hidden when it was bond number 7 and you had to make a proposal to Royal and Son Alliance and Willis once you are over 5 million. That is the issue that Rachel is going to have to deal with. That she's operating criminals, Jeremy French, buying bonds in his cousin's name. And bond number, that's 7, bond number 8, he didn't even log with the IPA. So it went to Willis, and from Willis it was stifled 1st of April 2014, of which there was a record on the following month in May 2014, and it was never even logged with the IPA, because actually it was Jeremy French who should have logged it with Rachel Howell. That was what was going on. And then when they went and got an Aviva bond through JLT, which has collapsed, Jardine Lloyd Thomas, and been swallowed into marsh, in September 2014, they were hoping that by doing that, they were going to be able to transfer all the liabilities of RSA onto Aviva. And that was revealed to me by Jardine Lloyd Thompson as being a corporate bond. A corporate bond. FRP Advisory LLP. A corporate bond. It has nothing to do with individuals. Willis has confirmed their customer was FRP Advisory LLP, a corporate bond. Jeremy French, a corporate bond that was bought in September 2014 and not reported to Rachel Howell. That corporate bond has continued to manifest itself using a different name of some jerk called Miles Needham. So they're changing the name. It's the same Aviva corporate bond, and it is now coming out under a new surety company and a new broker, and that was recorded with Rachel Howell at some point in the summer of 2020, after these people had gone into court on the 21st of July 2020 to get me incarcerated in a high secure prison, locked up 23 by 24 for 10 months. And for your information, the prison authorities and the Ministry of Justice are not expecting me to take my orders from the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales switchboard. Do you understand that, Chantal? And do you understand why I am being so firm with you?
Yes.
Thank you. God bless you. So will you please go and get this thing recorded?
All the lines are recorded. So this call is recorded. I have emailed Rachel.
Okay, and tell her she can sit. Tell her that she can sit and listen to it, and you can tell her that she owes me the courtesy of condoling me on the death of my late mother. My mother never said she was volunteering her life for the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. Never. I was left with the government running a public call for evidence in 2016 on insolvency practitioner bonds. I am the one who did all the work with my late mother. The recorded calls are publicly available as we investigated these instruments. It took us from 2013 all the way through to 2017 until she died, because Andrew Ratcliffe decided it was more important for him to say to her that he's retired rather than admit that he knew about these bonds. That is the situation. She did not choose to die. In hospital, she said, "Anna Mishauza Mut. Anna Mishauza Mut." Do you know what that means? It means I do not want to die. My Egyptian passport, a copy of it, was taken by the Baker Tilly partners in 2006, and they used it. They stole it and trafficked it to Reynolds Porter Chamberlain to use with one of these products in the court against me. It is in public evidence. It is on my website, my Egyptian passport. And they said, "We are going to bankrupt you," telling the world this is an Egyptian. She's a criminal. We are doing civil recovery of this Egyptian criminal who's hiding valuable assets overseas in a settlement operated by Abacus Global. And we are doing POCA Schedule 5 civil recovery, and she's a bankrupt. That was 2009. And when I phoned my institute for help on this criminal activity, my institute referred me to Tracy Stanhope. And I thought she was a proper chartered accountant. What do I find out later? That she's an ex-employee of biz and policy in the insolvency service, and that she's part of this crime operation. Tracy Stanhope. And I've got an automated email from her in October 2009 when my late aunt was in trauma in hospital, in the Egypt Air Hospital, military hospital, on the way to the airport, waiting for my institute to tell me what the hell was going on, so that we can get her passport renewed and get her back to the United Kingdom, to Adam Brooks Hospital, where they put a shunt in her head to help draining the water. And she died on the 4th of December 2009.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And Michael Izzer, in June 2009, when I spoke to him, he said to me, because he was the head of staff and the institute had John Wetherall in Milton Keynes in 2007, had given me instructions. He said to me, "I'm obliging you to make a complaint." And I said, "I don't want to complain. I don't believe in complaints." He said, "You've got a duty to report, and it is the Institute of Chartered Accountants, which is the one that actually pursues the complaint, not you." And it turned out in May 2011 that the Institute had sanctioned by exclusion the Baker Tilly partners for criminal behaviour together with PricewaterhouseCoopers. And Michael Izzer said to me, as head of staff, to whom I then had to report in June 2009 because they were going in to court without identifying who they were, anonymously, using one of these litigation products that are used by these people who call themselves insolvency practitioners, and using my passport, he said to me, "I want you to deal with this through the courts. And secondly, I am seeing Lawrence Long at a dinner tonight. I will take it up with him." And of course he didn't. And so the Institute of Chartered Accountants, on the 9th of August 2009, took upon itself to commission from a member in business called Chris Stiles a complaint, which he duly did, and that has been filed by him. But by the time he finished it, it was against the PricewaterhouseCoopers partners, the Abacus owners, and the Baker Tilly partners, by the time he'd finished it, my aunt was dead. So then it had to be taken over by the Institute on the basis that they had succeeded in getting their target. And the underlying activity was a predatory activity by the Royal Bank of Canada on the 1st of November 2005, which had bribed the owners of Abacus Global, the largest trust and fiduciary business in the world, £120 million, and they were a trust company of individual trustees and directors, and the Royal Bank of Canada got the customer base, the brand name, and basically Abacus disappeared after that, with some 70 billion disappearing with it. By the time you reach 2008, and everything that I am telling you everything I am telling you is on the website www.inthepublicdomain.net,
and web address yesterday.
And I am telling you,
there's nothing more that I can do, ma'am. I'm sorry to cut you off, but there's nothing more that I can do besides saying that you need to either email the complaints at ICAEW.com, or like as you've already said, you've already gone to the law enforcement. I have passed on your information, and I have let Rachel know via email that you have called in again today.
No, you will finish, because this is a recorded call, and this is the completion of yesterday's report. And the crucial point that you told me yesterday was that you do not routine have access to that website, www.inthepublicdomain.net. And the reason that the court ordered that website was set up from the 25th of April 2011 was because Michael Izzer and the Institute of Chartered Accountants were required to turn up to the hearing on the 25th of April 2011, as was the crime teams of BIS. And because they contravened a court order and did not turn up because there was information that they held that they didn't want to tell the court said from that point onwards, everything had to go in the public domain, including the historic file that was being covered up. And therefore, it was only at the beginning of May that Vernon Saw finally sent me an email telling me that the Baker Tilly partners were sanctioned by exclusion on the 7th of April 2011. At that point, it was taken up by City Trading Standards because it was a criminal offence, and at that point, it was intercepted by a man called John Evans, head of markets in the city, and communications were had with the Institute and with ICAS, which as a matter of law, the Institute was required to hand over to me, and John Evans in 2011 recorded the existence of that communication to the Institute and from the Institute and ICAS, but not giving it to me. I asked to have it repeatedly all the way up until 2014, and I even did a subject access request for it, and the Institute hasn't handed it over. And City Police have given you your own crime number on that correspondence, which is 6836/2011. And the witness to all these instruments as well is a man called Chris Phillips, who was the operator on the inside of the insolvency service from 2014, working with a woman called Rhiannon Lawson, telling the universe that I was a bankrupt and knowing that I wasn't, and lying to Joe Taylor of the National Audit Office. And you will see all the National Audit Office evidence on the evidence to the Justice Select Committee January 2019 on the website, and you will find that on the month of when my mother's death certificate was made public, January 2018, the Institute of Chartered Accountants took Chris Phillips onto their payroll. And you are ordered by me not to allow him access to this recording or to any of my communications with Rachel Howell. We have got recorded calls between Chris Phillips and my late mother when he admits that he was behind putting up a notice on the Insolvency Service website calling me a bankrupt. And there is a court order from Lord Goldring from August 2009 blocking any such characterization. So you've got a criminal on your payroll, and on that, in January 2018, 2 days after my mother's death certificate was public, I got a letter from FRP saying they had completed their project. These were contract killers, and they used DMH Stellard and Boodle Hatfield to steal an unlimited indemnity which was protecting my two properties, 333 Cromwell Tower in the Barbican, 218 Ben Jonson in the Barbican, and also my 30% stake, 4.5 million in Triad Group PLC, from predators. They stole that, and they broke and entered into my flat, 333 Cromwell Tower. They stole the court documents and records. They've controlled my address for service of documents from that day, which is CR 3512/15, City of London Police. And that was the address which remains on this false register. The head of the Public Interest Unit, Tony Hannon, has confirmed that that thing called the IIR is not any form of register. It's simply a website that is under the control of the people who are stated to be authorised by the Institute of Chartered Accountants, but plainly you're not in a position to authorise contract killing. So to finish off on what is already public, the Royal Bank of Canada, using Boodle Hatfield, went into the Mayors and Commonalty of the City of London in 2008. There was a nominal case, RJW versus me, whoever I am, and they turned it into RJW versus the Royal Bank of Canada and withdrew all my documents and papers and essentially took me out of the judicial system unbeknown to me, and then secondly entered a second contract where they removed themselves, which was not public until June 2013, in which they removed themselves and substituted my late aunt, Siham Samira'uth, Order of the Republic, and that was reported under the laws of the United Kingdom to Nick Howard, Matt Smith, whatever her name is, Claire Broadman, the insolvency practitioners for whom Rachel has got bondings, the 6 bonds for RSM Tenon and Premier Strategies, on the 2nd of September 2013. My mother and I had made a subject to contract offer to buy RSM Tenon and Premier Strategies the day the notice went up, and the shares of RSM Tenon were suspended. So we are the creditors of the Baker Tilly Group. That's a 200 million claim from 2012. And what the Baker Tilly Group did, because they haven't fought the claim, is that they got people inside the court to create a false file called My Name versus Rider 1, and to put the papers in that file and to bury it in the basement, where it was found by Master John Leslie on the 7th of November 2014, after the Aviva bond of September 2014, and was reported to the crime prosecution people, the fraud office, in fact the bank, and Equinity, because the bank had also just written that my share certificate, which had been stolen by the Royal Bank of Canada in 2007, which they had for a bed and breakfast transaction in 2007, so I could get a capital loss company, had been given to FRP Advisory LLP, and that they were going to try and register it on the share register of Triad Group PLC, and they have distorted the register in collusion with Lion Trust Asset Management, our biggest institutional shareholder, and that resulted in the float on AIM by Lion Trust Asset Management of FRP in March 2020, and insider dealing from that date onwards. So this latest bond, which doubtless is going to turn up to be a bond which is in the name of the FRP Trading Company, another corporate bond. It's simply got Miles Needham's name on it, but it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. It's the same as all the others, because whether it's the cousin of Jeremy French, it's still a corporate bond. It's the same entity. And yesterday, the crime teams of Equinity, who've actually been outsourced to India now, have revealed that Miles Needham is still continuing to operate under the name of FRP Advisory LLP, and that he's infiltrated the register of Triad Group PLC and put himself down there as being a correspondent address, but actually putting his name down there, and that he is going and embezzling money from Lloyds Bank Equinity's account, and the money which he is stealing from them, £79,000 he has stolen, and 29p, he's attributing to my unique reference number. So the man and the people that Rachel Howell is covering up on are stealing from Equinity's account with Lloyds Bank and are recording it as being money that I have encashed with my URN number, and I couldn't conceivably have done it because, number one, KPMG has blocked my Lloyds Bank accounts from the 14th of February 2014, and number two, the people who Rachel has sold bonds for, or covered up on the bonds that they've bought, have frozen my Nationwide account and embezzled the money that's in it, frozen from August 2020, so that I couldn't eat, I couldn't pay my electricity, I'm a geriatric in COVID isolation, I couldn't pay my telephone, I couldn't travel, I couldn't hire a lawyer, I couldn't renew my Banham subscription, and I had nowhere to go and nobody to look after me. You can describe that to Rachel and ask her to explain to me how she thinks incarcerated 24/7 in prison has allowed me to encash this check. My unique reference number in a public company that I took to market in 1996. And this is how I have ended up. Now, I've taken the opportunity to have had heard in the court the end of the Farringdon bond in 2013, and that it has already been exposed by Colin Bird in the trade rags. He said they made 43 billion in the first 5 years. It was growing. So over 20 years, that would be some 200 billion. That has already also been heard in the court. And it was the cover-up of that money that was driving all of this. And the attempts to carry on the secret bonding scheme after the insurance companies who were keeping it secret had exited. And the thing you need to tell Rachel is that you always have a policy number. And it is no use saying it's RSA Willis or it's Aviva JLT unless you reveal the policy number. In this market, where they are giving away the bonds in consideration for a corporate mandate, they are demanding that an organisation buys single tender its litigation funding. That is where they make their money. It is based on a false premise that the individual owns legally and beneficially the judicial standing and the estate of another human being, and that it is up to him what he does with it, but that he is doing it on behalf of third parties. Since Allianz is my insurance company, and they were persuaded by Ed Britton to get into this litigation activity the month that my mum lost her life, we lost her, January 2018, I have already reported to Allianz Legal Protection that that statement is not true, and that there is no mechanism that any individual can hold something which belongs to somebody else, whether they are bonded or whether they are not. And therefore the basic premise is fallacious. It has been revealed in the court that they are using these devices to stop claims. And when my late mother and I went into the court on the 19th of December, I'm telling you this because it has been heard and I have had the transcript. On the 19th of December 2014, the claim form was not issued on the day requested, but the claim form unmarked was stolen by the judge in charge of the commercial list, Julian Flo. This has already been heard, and he's gone into court and made an admission statement as to what he did. He took a copy of it and he handed it over to a barrister called Ruben Kaminsky on the 14th of April 2015, saying that he had done it in order to be able to protect FRP Advisory LLP, who are the people who had control of my stolen share certificate, and people who were mandated by the Royal Bank of Canada in respect of what they had done in 2008, which is taking me out of the judicial system, replacing me by them, and then going behind our backs also, and doing a contract with the private sector, including Boodle Hatfield and Reynolds Porter Chamberlain and other people, and replacing themselves by my late aunt until she was dead in December 2009, and the activities from that date onwards have been to cover up on who was responsible for her death, and then later who was responsible for my mother's death, and to benefit from the fact that they are both dead. And these matters started in 2005 when I was trying to get the details of the stonemason with my late father's for my late father's gravestone, who died in April 1996, and I was blocked from getting it. So what they were trying to do was to cover up on his death, and obviously my late father, my late mother, my late aunt were all beneficiaries of this settlement that was started in July 1995, which is the 25 years that I told you about, until July 2020, which is 100 million per annum nominal amounts, because you can't compensate for loss of life. So that's the lowest that you can go to for 25 years, which is the 2.5 billion. And they've been targeting my brother, who's also the beneficiary, and raided his home a number of times in 2020 with a witch hunt using 4 thugs from City of London police. And then when my sister-in-law was sheltering here, when she came back from Italy, in my flat, which is down the corridor, in January, 11th of January 2014, they smashed down the door and the lock while she was COVID sheltering, having come back from Italy and doing a language training course, for somebody. She was a teacher in Italian. 4 thugs from the City of London police came in and gave her a very, very hard time, because they were trying to get hold of her, and apparently giving her the impression that she was the one that they were trying to capture and put into this prison for 10 months, a high secure prison, for 4 hours. Can you imagine how my family has been destroyed? And my brother suffers from anxiety because he was the one who very kindly sacrificed his career and his life to protect me in 2005 and 2006. And you can see the distinguished press and the apology that I got on the regulated news service of the London Stock Exchange, and how his life has been destroyed from 2009 by these partners and their activities. And he suffers from anxiety, and he's on the maximum dosage. And these are addictive things, which they said were non-addictive until they came off patent. And he's been 24/7 under the care of doctors. And that is what happened to his wife. And then he's seen his sister put in prison for 10 months. How does anybody feel about that, Chantal?
I can't comment on that. I'm sorry for what your family has gone through. It sounds horrendous.
Correct. And it is appropriate that Rachel knows full well that it was a personal decision by Andrew Ratcliffe, President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, to tell my mother that he had retired and was not going to reveal his knowledge, because my late mother took the attitude that if the Institute of Chartered Accountants is operating this secret scheme, that it is the president, Andrew Ratcliffe, ex-partner in Coopers and Lybrand, that has to carry the can and make the public revelation. Allianz Group plc is a financier of the claim against PricewaterhouseCoopers LLP, which is 2010 folio 336. It is also the financier of the counterclaim against Herbert Smith, for which we needed this bed and breakfast transaction, which is HQ 06, that's 2006, XO 1803. So all these matters are already in the court. They are all won, but nobody would say you have won when you're dead and your life has been destroyed. But what has also been destroyed is the reputation of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. Because Andrew Ratcliffe, its president, was very willing for my mother to die in order that he hides. What do you mean it's not the case? He was very willing that my mother dies in order that he continues to hide the bonding scheme. Rachel needs to hear this, and she needs to know that I chose to protect her. Why did I protect her? Because she is not a member, and so I'm obliged to protect her. Why did I protect her? Because Neville Kahn, who was the chairman of this group in the Institute of Chartered Accountants, is my contemporary from Coopers and Lybrand in 1984. And he said this is extremely serious. Of course it is, because they're the auditors of the Royal Bank of Canada in Boodle Hatfield. And he was driven out of Coopers and Lybrand because it was taken over by Pricewaterhouse, which is where Colin Bird was. And what do I find? That the person who's aiding and abetting this crowd is Chris Hardy, member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. Who is he? He was in Charterhouse, working for me on the float of Markle Group on the USM the week before Black Monday in 1987. He's moved to Arden Partners. And he was on the other side of this, telling the world that I'm a bankrupt. Who's Arden Partners? Arden Partners is where Tony Bartlett went. Who's Tony Bartlett? FCA. He was our auditor, and he was the one who floated Markle on the USM. He floated Vega Group plc when he'd moved to what's it called? Beeson Gregory, together with Graham Cole and Chris Calloway, fellows of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and floated Triad Group plc. In March 1996, these are all members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. He left Evolution, which it became, in 2002. He went and gave evidence to Tim Pope against these people. In 2005, that's a public record, to PwC. He was a co-owner and director of Arden Partners. And as Arden Partners, they spoke for me in the employment tribunal through our analyst, Lorne Daniel. And that's now 2012, folio 336, unlimited damages under the Public Interest Disclosure Act. This is Chris Hardy, who knows me personally and has worked for me and was a director. So what does he do? He goes and leaves Arden Partners after Mummy's dead and goes and joins WH Ireland. Another special from BDO. And what does the FRC do about all of this? When it's got the report against BDO in 2007 from my late mum, they go and give it to Field Fisher to get rid of while mum is dying in hospital. And Nicholas Carter Pegg, FCA of BDO, who's the auditor of DMH Stallard, WH Ireland, not Arden Partners, FRP Advisory LLP from the day it started, Shendish, its corporate partner, goes and gives Field Fisher an auditor's report. And then you end up with Paul Wynne-Bischoff having to leave, Melanie having to leave, Paul George having to leave, and Stephen Hadrill having to leave. That's really clever. Goodbye, FRC. And some woman, I've even forgotten her name now, hacking into all these documents in favour of FRP Advisory LLP. And now we find them in this correspondence bit of the Equinity Register and embezzling Equinity checks, which they've confirmed have been encashed, and attributing that money of £79,029 to me being my URN. So,
they're all on recording, ma'am.
So there is nothing more for you to do. You can tell Rachel that I protected her because when I went into court, I evaluated the instruments as being the same as the AXA KPMG default numbers. These are all default numbers of 5 million each. And I told the court that the 6 instruments of those 3 people, Nick Howard, Matt Smith and Claire Broadman, RSM Tenant and Premier Strategies, because you get 1 per person, 1 per company. I told them that they were 30 million, being 6 instruments, 6 times 5. And I adopted the default number of the AXA KPMG ones because even though she told me that they were RSA Willis bonds, she didn't confirm the amount and she didn't give me the policy number. And I'm warning you that all these tend to be corporate bonds, so it should be 1 policy number. So she needs a policy number, and I did not give her name to the court because I was protecting her. The reason I was protecting her is because as members of the Institute, we are obliged to protect the people who are not qualified and can't be sanctioned. And the reference to that is an email to me, copied to Nikki Swaysland, about September 2012 from Robin Feith, telling me that even though he's the member's representative on the board of the Institute, he is not excluded from reporting. Obviously, he's not excluded from reporting, but that is not a reason for him not to deal directly himself. So he was trying to protect himself from seeing the evidence, but that's technically wrong because we all have to see the evidence and we have a duty to report. And I discharged that duty in full to the head of staff, Michael Izzer, in June 2009. I am fully protected but I'm explaining why I'm protecting Rachel. And also because she can't be blamed for the fact that Andrew Ratcliffe, who's personally responsible for not replying to my late mother, is responsible for her death. And we know that he was doing it because he told a retired partner from Coopers and Lybrand that he knew about the bonding scheme and simply refused to tell Mummy. And so when I was heard in court on these bonds, so tell her I did not name her because I needed to protect her from all of this. Can you make that absolutely clear to her?
Yes, on the notes. I've noted that down.
Okay, but it can't go on any further. She's got to address the fact that they're corporate bonds, and she has to address the fact that the 1985 Insolvency Act depended on rules in 1985. Those never came, and therefore the 1986 Act, which is supposed to be a consolidating act, has never been implemented. And that has been confirmed by the law commissioners, because the law commissioners under the 1985 Law Commissioners Act, I think it's 85, it might be, sorry, 1965 Law Commissioners Act, they have to deal with all repeals, all new laws, and all consolidations. And in 2017, when we were investigating these things, my mother and I, they wrote to us confirming that they were not involved. And that explains a lot of mysteries, because the whole essence of creating the notion of a practitioner is that they are an individual. Where you have an individual, they must have their individual VAT number, and they must quote it everywhere. And they have to work as an individual with an individual VAT number, and they have to prepare proper accounts under VAT Section 1, VATA 1. And you're not able to say that my trade and my accounts is embezzling from people's bank accounts. In this case, it's the Equinity bank account in Gillingham in Kent. Lloyd's Banking Group. You cannot say that I am doing that, and I am putting on the Equinity records that the person who has encashed this check, this is their URN number, and that happens to be me, and the universe knows that it couldn't be me, because these people who floated on the AIM market in March 2020 were the ones who are inside my Nationwide account, having already gone inside my Halifax Lloyd's banking account. And you have to ask yourself the question, how did they know what my account number was in the Halifax in order for Junal Ahmed to write a Secretary of State letter of the 14th of February 2014, quoting my Halifax number and bank account, and that bank account had got £100 in it, which my mummy had opened up for me on the 12th of September 2012 in order to put the damages from folio 336. And do you know how much money I asked for from the Baker Tilly partners and all the people that they'd engaged, each individual? Do you know how much money I asked for from each of them, Rachel, after all the damage they've done? I asked for £100 from each individual. And if it was a company, £1,000. And I also asked them to give me back the things of mine that they had, my documents and records, and then to bugger off and never bother me again. That's 2012 Folio 336. And if you go onto Twitter, you can look it up at 2012 Folio 336. It was opened in January 2019. And I started using it in December 2019, and it ends on the 3rd of October 2020. And that is on the 6-year deadline, you have to file in the court or else you don't get any relief. So because we were in the court under whistleblowing law in 2006, March 2006, when it came to March 2012, we had to file in the court. Otherwise we wouldn't get all the relief for the 6 years of hell, and that's called 2012 Folio 336. And all we wanted them to do in March 2012, which we served, gave it to them on the 4th of July 2012. You have to serve it within 4 months. All we wanted them to do was to just bugger off, give me my stuff back and go away. And this is what we've got in return. Okay, does that complete the story? So can you tell her, for individuals, they have to register for VAT as individuals. That's a general principle. And the idea of having a practitioner is that they're individuals. And they're supposed to be individuals who are members of some organisation that can make sure that they behave correctly. But as Mark Carney of the Bank of England, the Canadian at the Bank of England, said rather belatedly, you can't police honesty. And the thing about VAT is it's a voluntary tax insofar as it's up to you whether you register for VAT or you don't register for VAT. So VAT resolves these things. And that's why whenever somebody says, oh, I've got a bill, you have to actually see the bill with the VAT number or else you don't know who you're dealing with. And what people do is to go into courts and they do all sorts of things and they provide timesheets but don't actually provide a bill. And that's something that members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and even if you're not qualified, you have to recognise. And this is how they got away with these tricks. And my legal advisors on VAT was Deloitte on these events from 2005, because the head of VAT in Coopers and Lybrand, and again when it was taken over by Price Waterhouse, was Dennis Knowles, and he worked for me. So these things are in court on VAT from 2005 and 2006, including on the Baker Tilly partners. And the criminal in Baker Tilly was called Ian White, the main criminal, and he joined Deloitte's on the 1st of April. And and he was dealing with these in court using the Deloitte's email address, and Deloitte's were the witnesses against him on VAT already.
Okay.
And and it is that transaction which is tied to these 3 insolvency practitioners of yours. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that completes the story. She needs to listen to all of that, and she needs to understand that she's dealing with insurance instruments. They must have a policy number. She needs to confirm the 5 million on these bonds, confirm that they're corporate bonds, and she needs to know that I can't protect her forever. I just took a flyer that they were 5 million, so they'd better be 5 million. But anyway, she's now got, since they were using this name of FRP Advisory LLP, that is the corporate bond that they had in September 2014. So if she puts that down, and she needs to put that down there, and she needs to tell me who is the surety and what the value is for this latest corporate bond and who the broker is. And she'll find the name of a bloke called Miles Needham. Well, that's being used instead of Jeremy French and Paul Atkinson, who's the son of Dorothy French. It's all in the family. And you will see that David Carr left the IPA because he didn't like being stitched up by the Institute or the government crime teams. And also there's an unlimited damages claim against the IPA together with PKF Littlejohn, because they lied to them. They didn't show these liabilities in the 31 December 2013 balance sheet. And the claim on the PKF Littlejohn, because these people, your Deloitte IPs, were conning the auditor of the IPA, which is PKF Littlejohn, a very nice people, Paul Hopper. They've got Markel as their insurer, and that's the same insurer as Kingston Smith, and Kingston Smith was obviously underwriting the Baker Tilly partners because they were fraudulently using the Markel insurance in respect of their transaction involving Adrian Shipwright in 2008,
Okay,
and then they were carrying on.
I have to bring this to an end. It's been over an hour, almost an hour. Well, over an hour, I'm afraid. I understand that you're giving me the recap of what's happening.
I'm not giving you anything. I'm not giving you anything. I am putting a formal record that Rachel is going to listen to, that Markel should have been put on notice by Lawrence Long in 2007, and so should Kingston Smith. And on the 29th of January 2009, in a meeting at Reynolds Porter Chamberlain, attended by the late Tony Egan, FCA, and the late Philip Hollins, FCA, Member of Council, Lawrence Peter Long notified us that he had not notified Markel Insurer, as he was required to do under United Kingdom law in September 2007, as I required him to do. He did not notify them in February 2008, as he was required to do under United Kingdom law. He did not notify him on the 28th of January before turning up on the 29th. That is Markel Insurer. In June 2010, Cliff Ireton of Kingston Smith notified me that Lawrence Long did not notify him in 2007. I had gone back home to Egypt at the beginning of September 2007 to resume my life with my aunt in our home in Gezira at the foot of the pyramids, in my flat, 6 Shara Shafiq Horbal, Heliopolis, Cairo. A non-domiciliary, returning home, and never subject to deemed domicile under United Kingdom inheritance tax laws. I had to come back because of this gang at the end of that year. My late aunt's passport was not renewed. Our properties weren't properly registered. Our joint bank accounts weren't properly notarized. My flat in Shafiq Hurbal in Heliopolis has been broken into. All our property stolen. My grandparents' stuff. My parents' stuff. Both sides of the family. We've had squatters in there. The same as has happened to 333 Cromwell Tower. How do you expect a human being to survive? I came back to the United Kingdom because John Wetherell told me, since the fraud office have asked, why haven't the Baker Tilly partners reported, I'm obliged to answer. I'm obliged to make a complaint to my institute.
Yes, you can make a complaint.
I can make. He told me I would be sanctioned if I didn't do it. And it wasn't until May 2011, after we'd been in court, without anybody from the institute turning up, that Vernon told me they'd been chucked out in January 05. And when they wrote to trading standards in the city, they said, oh, it doesn't matter that we chuck them out. ICAS took them on. It wasn't true. ICAS said it wasn't true. ICAS said they took on Baker Tilly UK Group LLP, which never came into existence until 2007. So nobody took them on. And more importantly than that, the 1984 EU directive says that each member state, which includes the United Kingdom, must have a statutory register of auditors. The United Kingdom does not have a statutory register of auditors. You can see that in my evidence to the FRC, which they put on their website in May 2016. The United Kingdom does not have a statutory register of auditors. All we have is that the Institute records firms. It has to record firms because firms have to monitor training contracts. When you're an articled clerk in a firm, when you're articled to a partner, every 3 months they go through your training records, which show what jobs you've done and what you've learnt. For 3 years. So of course a firm which is a training firm has to register. Okay.
Like I said, we've got this all on recording, so I'm still share this with Rachel. I don't know what else I can say at the moment.
Okay, can you tell her?
Yeah, you had on the recording what you want us to tell her.
Okay.
Well, in the notes.
This needs to be preserved. And you need to get it typed up.
We don't write transcripts up, but
You're going to have to, because you have got an obligation to get it checked with me, because she has to notify the surety, not the broker, the surety. And she is prohibited from giving anything to the intermediary, because the intermediary has got a contract to take the insurance notification away. And that is because FRP Advisory LLP, which is the fake name that your Miles Needham is using to operate, has a professional negligence file, which it had with Henderson's, for its professional negligence insurance, and a professional negligence insurance claim was made on them in February 2014. By the way, I sued this entity. She needs to know that. In February 2000, I sued FRP Advisory LLP in February.
Well, you sued them, sorry.
Yes, in February 2014. City of London Police said these are massive, they're heavily networked and very dangerous. You have to deal at arm's length. So I sued them in February 2014 and told the Royal Bank
So
of...
what party was that again? You sued who?
FRP Advisory LLP.
Oh, FRC Advisory.
FRP, French Rowley Partners, yes. And Julie Kinnison, FCA, a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and the cousin of Jeremy French, who's fronting up being on the IPA list, a man called the son of Dorothy French, and the cousin of Jeremy French, who's called Paul Atkinson. And they filed an acknowledgement of service in the court under 2012 folio 336, saying they were not defending on the 11th of March 2014.
Okay, so what we can... So we've got all that noted down. Is there anything that we can do? Like, we can help you. We do have like support, emotional support as well from CARBA. As a member, you are entitled to have their support.
CARBA are in the court already, and they will be closed down because they took this case on in 2009. And what CARBA are doing are taking all these things, and then they are taking all these reports, and they are putting you through all their processes and procedures, and then they are destroying all the records, and then they are having a face-to-face meeting with you where they tell you, I will complete this report, where they tell you that the only thing that they are doing is helping you to fill out social security payment forms, and they are not using any of the money which they have in their coffers to pay so that you can survive on a day-to-day basis, and that the reason that their staff are doing that is because they've got a chief executive who draws money and stays at home and never does any work, and that their raison d'etre is to help you make these social security payments so that they are able to cover up on the crimes committed by chartered accountants. And then what they do after that is to destroy every single one of the reports that you have made to them, so that when you rely on them to give to the insurance companies, they don't have them anymore. And the staff say the reason that they do that is because if they didn't do it, they wouldn't be paid any wages, and that they don't suffer any sanction because they're not members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. It is also, they said, a way that these crime teams of chartered accountants are able to say, we have made a contribution of money to CARBA to help those members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants who fall on hard times.
Yeah.
And Chris Sykes, who was the member of business who was chosen by member support to do this report, was selected because he was supporting another member previously, and the chartered accountants who were attacking him went and put him into the court in order to bankrupt him and sanction him by exclusion as a bankrupt because he didn't have enough money to stand up to them. And what they're doing is going in and saying, oh, we've bankrupted this person. And therefore, because, you know, in the Institute, what we say is that if you've mismanaged your personal affairs, then you shouldn't be going around practicing as a chartered accountant until you've organised your affairs. So you don't have your certification for the period until you fix your situation. So what that's meant is that there's a trade called tit-for-tat bankruptcy. If you are somebody who's got the right to petition for the compulsory winding up of an organisation, like I have in respect of the Baker Tilly Partners, and obviously when we did the claim against them, the next thing that we did in 2013 was to petition for the compulsory winding up, but where there've been criminal activity, then it was the crime teams of Biz who should have been doing the fronting up the petition, and that's where these false things came into being. And so the criminal inside the partnership, who's called Penrose Margaret Foss of Oxford University, who joined the Baker Tilly Partners in 2006, she got a clause into John Wetherell in the beginning of 2011, at the time that my MP had taken these things up, and she started corresponding directly with Michael Izzer, who then referred those communications to John Wetherell, and they've been destroyed. And those were the things which I have asked to be provided, because they were required in the court from 2011. Mark Field's communications to Michael Izzer, which he then gave to John Wetherell, and it's all that carryings on between them, Margaret Penrose Foss, and trading standards that the Institute has been covering up on, which has left me totally exposed, and the Institute's just sat there while I've had to go in instead of the Institute from all these years. So I'm not very happy, you might gather, Chantal.
Yeah.
So I'm not a one-man band, Institute of Chartered Accountants, and there are two other things that you need to be aware of. Number one, the habit now that you've got of recording advice from the technical teams is not acceptable. You're entitled to advice, to ethical and technical support without being recorded. And secondly, this habit you have of allowing law firms to access people's numbers and say to people, well, you can go and get advice from this law firm with your Institute membership number. That's a load of bollocks. There is no mechanism that a member of Institute... wait a minute, because this is criminal, and this is a recorded call. There is no way in the universe that members' numbers should ever be given to outside firms.
They're not. Members' numbers are never given out. That's not in the public domain. We would never give out a member's number to anybody.
That's not true. You are saying that members can go to firms and quote their membership.
Who's saying that, though?
The Institute says that because you've got a legal helpline, and to activate the legal helpline, you have to be prepared to give your membership number. Okay? And I'm saying...
Well, it's with CARBA, the support with the legal helpline with CARBA.
I'll have to take a range... okay.
Yeah, because...
Okay.
That's who any legal support is with now. I mean, that's the last couple of years.
Okay, that's excellent. Okay, well, in that case, you'd better raise with Rachel that you need to revisit... You'd better revisit this entire CARBA thing, because this whole CARBA situation is tied up with these bonds. Because what Kaba has always said is because the financial support is the emotional support is tied to the financial support. I've had emotional support from the institute, ethical support. That was Elizabeth Willis. Willits, all the way from April 2005. And what Elizabeth said in 2009 is that using me, we've tested every single one of the Institute's processes to their extreme. And from 2009, I was inputting all the technical stuff to the technical team because they were out of their depth. And the fellow at the time was called Ray. Because the people who were looking after me were Mike Downing and the late Richard, I've forgotten what he's called, Barton or something.
Right. I've just got an email address. Nigel Howell, he's the head of our investigation department. I've just been emailing him for the conversation, and he has confirmed that I can give you his email address.
No. I know his email address.
You have it?
No. There is no emails which can be used because my email address, which has been used in the past, is in the courts already. Because the harassment campaign that I have been under has been using that email address because my email address, which is mira.makar@triadgroup.plc.uk, has been in the court from an email dated the 27th of January 2005.
But you could send it from a different, you can make a new email address and contact him.
No, I'm telling you, I can't have any contact with Nigel Howell because he's already in the court, sweetheart, because he has already communicated with me. And so his emails to me blocking the bonds are already in the court and with the insurance companies. Because he's a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and he himself personally was blocking these bonds, the RSA bonds and the Willis bonds. So you can email him back, and it's very unfortunate that he sent that email, and it's very unfortunate that you told him about these events. How did he know?
I just emailed him because I was told that he'll be the person that you would need to contact regarding any further.
Right. Well, you generated an email contrary to this recorded call because his emails telling me and telling Mummy that he wasn't going to give us the bond details are already in the in these serial of crimes, and that's.
Well, I haven't mentioned any names. No names have been mentioned. Obviously, you didn't give me a name until you just gave out an email address just now. However,
I was forced to do it because you told me.
You weren't forced. I didn't ask you for your email address. I was offering to give you Nigel's email address. You gave.
No. What you're offering to do is a counter. Is a counter offer. I am telling you, you had one job and one job only, which was to keep an accurate record. So you have now alerted Nigel Howell, and that is unfortunate because he's married to Rachel Howell, and it was never Rachel's intention to get a husband into trouble. Now, you're going to have to go and ask her how to deal with this. I very deliberately did not raise his name, and I very deliberately told you very extensively how I have already protected her. I protected her because she's not a member of the Institute. How many times do I need to tell you that, Chantal? Right, very good. So how on earth can you protect her by implicating a husband? And that's why you compelled me to tell you the Triad Group PLC email address, and that was the theft of my privileged instructions, which were accepted by Allen and Overy LLP 0LV 30091 in the Chancery Division, issued on the 3rd of December 2010, unlimited damages, with a fire on the 12th of July 2006. Unlimited damages. And what you have now done by forcing that exposure is to trigger that claim in respect of that email address. And it is Triad Group PLC, whose reputation Miles Needham, FCA, has sought to trash. In other words, my reputation and that of my aunt. And I can confirm to you that on the 5th of May 2011, the court has heard that Mira McCarr is the claimant and that it is the company's court, Chancery Division 6530 of 2005, which is the correct court reference for this bond, Mira McCarr, nominally versus Triad Group PLC, John Christopher Rigg, FCA, Alistair McIntyre Fulton, who was heard at the same time, an ex-employee, minority shareholder, and Ian Michael Haynes. John Christopher Rigg, Order of the Republic, OBE, FCA, PhD, born 1946, qualified 1976, is the joint principal shareholder. Chantal?
Ma'am, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, can we conclude this call? Can we conclude this call now?
Yes, of course. I was just saying, if there's anything else that we can offer, like if there's another support
I'm not asking you for any support because it's beyond you. I have had, it's very simple. The City of London police, listen! You cannot support somebody who's already been classed as a suicide risk by the Criminal Investigation Department. We do not offer that facility to our members. Got it? Do you understand what I'm saying? There's nothing you can do.
Yes.
Do you understand it can't be done? Do you understand that, Chantal?
Okay.
Good. You can't do it. You've got people who are working at home, hybrid working, and they like to operate 9 to 5. We're not geared up to stop somebody's suicide. You can stop somebody being driven completely mad by letting them speak to Rachel and find out who the surety is and the broker and letting me make the claim so that she goes back to her ordinary job of just keeping the books and finding out if there's a policy number. We do not have an investigations department. We never have had. When we tried to look at this in 2009 with the help of Philip Hollins, who was a member of council, he had to go and find who the people that we outsourced investigations to were, and none of them had the experience or capability of being public company directors who could handle an investigation. And the head of investigations was David Moody. It's not Nigel Howell. And we're not going to make a late change now. And we've been through this loop once before. I went and had meetings with Martin Dougal, or whatever he's called, and with David Moody. We've done that, seeing the head of investigations. Nigel Howell doesn't work in that field. He works in the fields of the people who are buying instruments of crime and not registering for VAT. He's in a different line of work.
He might have changed roles since you last contacted, because on his role as head of investigation.
Well, this is a live investigation. We can't start a new one because he has already got involved as Nigel Howell. Whatever job he has in the Institute, we've already gone through the hurdle that the person who was in charge of regulatory, Vernon, didn't know that these instruments were being operated.
Okay.
So the only person who's important in all of this is, firstly, Rachel. She can condole me on losing mummy. Secondly, she can make sure that Chris Phillips, who's working there now, doesn't get to hear any of this. Thirdly, she can go and look at the website, because she'd asked me originally, because the IPA give out all these bond details, and they went through a formal process with me of asking me to do a subject access request, because they wanted to make it very formal, and that was done. And then she said, "Oh, do you mind if you show me what you did for them?" And the answer from them is no. They're not going to allow me to give her the subject access request, because she should be giving me these details herself anyway. So she's got the name of this bloke, Miles Needham. He'll have some other FRP name. But anyway, she needs to give me the bond details of that and the broker, and she needs to give me the policy number, and she needs to know that she must not communicate with the broker, because the intermediaries are part of the problem. And she needs to find a policy number, because they're trying to do these transactions off the balance sheet, so the policy number is not logged. So when you turn up at a surety like Aviva, they haven't got a record of it. And Jardine Lloyd Thompson said, "Oh yes, we keep duplicate records," and they have duplicate records, but in fact they don't. But what Jardine Lloyd Thompson JLT told me was that we're only getting involved in these instruments because we're requiring the company to sign up with a single mandate with us and buy all the litigation funding from us. And so we just give out these bonds as an adjunct to this other thing. She needs to know all of that. And she needs to know if anybody's going to get into trouble, it'll have to be Andrew Ratcliffe, because Vernon Saw said he didn't know anything about it. Okay?
All right. Okay.
Okay, and can you tell Nigel Howell, please, can he get out of the way? Because in order to protect Rachel, and given what he's already done, and what effectively he's done by this email, is that he forced me to reveal the other thing from January 2005. So can you keep this thing confidential now, because I don't want to jeopardize the position of any of the insurance companies.
Okay. All right, then. So I've updated the notes.
Okay, if she can listen to all of that and let her know, I need a rest now, because I'm very scared of because my mother lost her eyesight in one eye in 2013 when we felt the state was turning against us from, all the blood pressure zooming up. And while I was incarcerated, when all these things were going on behind my back, I had to be monitored overnight because of the risk of the same sort of trauma-related stroke that my mother had. So I was subject to night monitoring. I nearly died. I don't know whether you've ever been in prison for locked up 24/7 in the middle of COVID with a raging fever, a deep-seated chest infection, and with not being able to communicate with the outside world. And for the record, there was no identity checking on me when that happened to me. Can you imagine how serious this is? And you can tell Nigel how I didn't hear from him while I was in prison, so he's a bit late. And he certainly didn't turn up to come and collect me. All the people were waiting for was for somebody in the outside world to say that they'd come and collect me and give me a safe place to be. That's all they were waiting for, because once you're in there, they can't let you go unless somebody in the outside world volunteers to come and collect you, give you somewhere safe to be, and give you some money until your bank accounts can be opened again. That's all it needed to get out. Because that's the problem that the prisons have. They can't just let people out. Because many people who go into prison is because there's some gang working on the outside and they find somewhere to bury you. And in this case, it's KPMG, because KPMG used to be the auditor of the RSA bond. And then they were the ones who were hacking into HBOS bank accounts, wealthy people's bank accounts, and then giving out the bank account numbers. And they are the auditor of the private sector prisons, Sodexo SA, Société Anonyme, and they are the auditor of Serco, who are the people traffickers who go and ambush you and kidnap you and get you put into the prison. So they've got it completely stitched up.
Alright, so we've got these notes down. I've got the recording.
Okay, so let her listen to it carefully. Let her listen to it carefully, and then tell her, I'm going to have a break. I'm going to try and rest now, and then maybe have a walk to the market so that my head doesn't burst. And then I'll ring her on Monday at about 11, and we can just go through the insurance details, and then if she can give me clearance that I can report to Lloyd's Bank, especially the Gillingham branch, that my URN was used in respect of this 79,000 that was stolen by Miles Needham, and that she can give me the surety details, and then I can report to Lloyd's Bank. And then after I've reported to Lloyd's Bank, we can take it to the surety. But she is not to tell the broker. And of course, she's not to communicate with Miles Needham, but that goes without saying. Okay? And all these provisions and these reports are covered by official secrets. And that's because it's information. If you are a prison officer or involved in the prison, you have to sign the Official Secrets Act, and any information that comes from a prison officer to anybody else is treated as being covered by the same act, okay? And it's also insider information. And you've got the shares of FRP FRP, which are being traded on the AIM market on a false basis. And you've got Lion Trust, which is obviously Triad's principal shareholder and the principal shareholder of FRP. And the bloke there is called Anthony Cross. He's very aggressive. He says things are binary, and he gambles, and he does insider dealing. He's been doing it since 2004, and he says it either goes up or it goes down. And he was taking a gamble on FRP having said, oh, this market is going up. Well, I'm not sure that there is a market for going up by stealing from Lloyds Bank in the name of equinety and then attributing that theft to the URN number of somebody whose reputation is at stake. And the fact that there is nothing more important than my reputation in the public market was heard this year in front of a High Court judge in the Queen's Bench Division, a gentleman called Fordham, who was born in 1964, who you'll be able to see is a human rights lawyer, and he was the representative of in the Pinochet trials. So he's got a very distinguished CV, and he has openly acknowledged and accepted that there is one thing which is very important to me, and that's my reputation in the public market, and I have been publicly exonerated and vindicated by him during this year.
Okay. All right then. Yeah.
Okay, is that enough?
There's a lot you can say. That's enough. That's enough. Thank you.
And can you tell her on my website, because she wanted to see all my evidence to biz on these insolvency practitioner bonds, there's a special page for them. She'll find it on there. So the government said put it on a separate website because they didn't want to put it on their own. They put my name as a respondent. Obviously it was me and Mummy, but anyway, they put my name as a respondent in their summary, but the actual evidence, they said put it on a website because they still had these silly things up there saying that these individuals are authorised by the Institute of Chartered Accountants. The Institute doesn't have the power to say to somebody, don't register for VAT, so we can't authorise anybody. Okay? But anyway, she'll find it there, and if she looks up the Justice Select Committee page, she will see that I gave the Justice Select Committee all the evidence that went to the National Audit Office in 2016. It's all there. All the folders are there. Tell her I've got paper copies of them all, because Mummy and we bought loads of printed copies. If she wants the printed copies, she can have them. But I physically can't move because I'm relying on people's charity to survive. And I've got a broken front door. All my evidence files and everything else I can't get to because they're in the storerooms. And I'm only here because there was nowhere else to go, because when push comes to shove, there's nobody prepared to take you in. And incidentally, when I was incarcerated, just to clarify, in order to demonstrate that they never did any identity checking, they had an address for me recorded as being somewhere in Hackney. So that's to confirm that they wanted to clear the record that I was there, because they knew I shouldn't have been there. This is just criminal activity by Miles Needham.
Okay.
Is that helpful? And it ties to the 3 IPs from 2013. And the other bonds that were bought in 2013, which they didn't even bother telling the IPA about, some of them, that's all Institute, right? So it's Institute, even though they tried to pretend. And the general rule is, the product rule is, if it's over 5 million, you have to make a proposal. And so they were ducking over to the IPA, so that the Institute wouldn't see it, and so that they'd avoid making a proposal. So these are all insurance frauds. Oh, and I forgot to finish, when FRP, when I sued them, what they did was that they withdrew their file from Henderson's, took off all the reports of the claim and the insurance claims, and then they gave the sanitised file to Arthur J. Gallagher, in 2017. So what people are doing with their professional negligence insurance is they're treating it as a file. They go to one broker, they take all the claims, but they don't pass it on to the insurance. Then they withdraw the file from the first professional negligence broker, give it to the second broker, having taken off all the claims, and then the second broker continues the insurance. and that's Arthur J. Gallagher. It's an American firm, and their auditor is Ernst & Young. And of course, I had to make a report to Ernst & Young about the criminal behaviour of each of Arthur J. Gallagher and FRP Advisory, who were just shunting these insurance policies. And they were my mother's proxy in the AGM in October 2005. And they are sort of on our side and for us at the AGM. And they were doing the investigations on where money had disappeared. And also they are the auditor of Senkos, which was the nominee for the float of FRP. And obviously they've had the reports on the false float. And the float depended on a report from an independent accountant, which was Baker Tilly, some Baker Tilly corporate finance company rebranded RSM. So it was Baker Tilly who I bust, which was the financial advisor on the AIM float.
Okay. All right then. Okay, so for all of that down, like I said.
So I'm going to ring Rachel on Monday at 11.
Okay.
And then after that, I will be reporting. I will be reporting to the bank.
Okay.
But I'm going to give her, I'm going to let her have the opportunity of telling me these details, so that when I report to the bank, I'm able to tell her, yes, Rachel knows, and she's the one who controls the reports to the surety. And then we will tell the surety together. Because we have to do this correctly. And she knows that I'm in touch with Lloyds Bank anyway from 2013, because when I made the subject to contract offer to buy RSM 10, and I was dealing with Antonio Ortiz, who's a contemporary of my younger brother from INSEAD. So Lloyds knows about this, and we're customers of theirs as well.
Okay.
All right?
All right, then. Well, thank you for your call, and I hope you do have a good day besides what's happened today.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and unwind now, and if you've got time, have a
right.
look at the website. I'm sorry you can't get it while you're at work, but if you look at it, on a phone or something, it's justified to do that in work time, because the courts say we've put all this stuff in the public domain. People are expected to know about it and to check it.
Okay.
Do you see the principle?
Yeah.
And do you see why the courts say that? They say if everything is public, then people are supposed to be aware of it. That's the basic rule. Okay, enjoy your weekend, and I'll speak to you on Monday at 11. Can you give me a call reference for today?
It's the same reference number. We keep it all together. It's the same reference number that you gave me earlier. The 1809-25 32347.
Okay, so on Monday I'll want to sign off on being able to go to Lloyds Bank in Gillingham. So I'll wait until we've had the call, and then I'll do that report. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Chantal. You've been very, very good.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoy the website.
All right, thank you.
And the Twitter is at 2012 Folio 336.
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye.
All right, then, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
(1:22) Friday, 19 November 2021.